President Trump has just weighed in on Iran's attempt at retaliation for U.S. strikes on its nuclear facilities this past weekend. Trump, writing on Truth Social, quote, Iran has officially responded to our obliteration of their nuclear facilities with a very weak response. They've gotten it all out of their system, and there will hopefully be no further hate. I want to thank Iran for giving us early notice, which made it possible for no lives to be lost and nobody to be injured. Perhaps Iran can now proceed to peace and harmony in the region, and I will enthusiastically encourage Israel to do the same. Now, here's a look at Iran's response that Trump is now referring to as weak. Iran earlier today launching short and medium-range ballistic missiles toward a heavily fortified U.S. base in Qatar. U.S. officials say there are no reports of injuries or casualties among American troops or Qatari citizens. Now, this could be in part because of what President Trump pointed out in his post. Iran actually gave Qatar advance notice before the strikes. A source tells CNN this was intended to minimize casualties and preserve an off-ramp for the conflict. While Iran's thwarted attack today may have been on the lighter end of their retaliatory options, a new bulletin from the Department of Homeland Security warns Iran could try to target U.S. government officials if Iranian leaders believe the, quote, stability or survivability of their regime is at risk. This all follows new Israeli strikes on Iran today aimed at the notorious Evin prison in Tehran, known for housing political prisoners and Iran's military headquarters. CNN has this covered from every single angle. Fred Pleitgen in Iran, Aaron Burnett in the United Arab Emirates, Jeremy Diamond in Tel Aviv, Israel, and Jeff Zeleny at the White House in Washington, D.C. We want to start things off with CNN's Fred Pleitgen, who is in Tehran, Iran. Fred, what are you seeing on the ground there today, and what are you hearing from Iranian officials about what may come next?
Hi there, Phil. Well, first of all, as far as this retaliation is concerned, a couple of hours ago, the Iranians came out with statements saying that they had, in fact, launched a barrage of missiles towards the Al Udeid air base, run, of course, by the United States in Qatar. They said, and this came from a statement from Iran's Supreme National Security Council, that the amount of missiles fired by towards their facilities by the United States, obviously indicating that this could very well have been a tit-for-tat response by the Iranians. The Iranians are calling this a decisive response, a robust response, and they also say that it was successful. The Iranian state media, Phil, is saying that 6 of the missiles came through and hit their target. Obviously impossible for us to independently verify that. Marv, and there were actually celebrations in the streets here in Tehran following that attack by the Iranians. And as far as today is concerned, we did see a lot of anti-aircraft fire coming here over the skies of Tehran this evening. Also, of course, preceding that were those Israeli airstrikes that you were talking about. Some of those airstrikes actually very close to our location. Earlier today, we heard
Fred Pleitgen, one of the few Western journalists in Tehran, having some issues there with his sound. We are going to keep in touch with him throughout the course of the show. Fred, thank you. Stay safe. I want to turn now to CNN anchor Aaron Burnett, who is also in the region. She's in the United Arab Emirates, near the Strait of Hormuz, a key strategic waterway in the Middle East. Aaron, Iran's attack today is only putting this entire region more on edge, it seems.
Yeah, more on edge. And of course, there's so much concern. I mean, if you look at between the air base here in the United Arab Emirates and obviously the massive naval presence here by the U.S. Navy, as well as in Bahrain, where the Fifth Fleet is, and in Qatar, where you saw those strikes from Iran today, you have up to 30,000 troops just here in the Gulf, where we're talking about right now on high alert tonight, Phil, concerned about what could happen. There had been a shelter-in-place order that had been issued by the U.S. Embassy in Qatar for American citizens when those missiles started coming in, short and long ranges. Fred was just describing from Iran. You saw a panic even at a mall and a region very much on edge. Also concerned that the threat to Americans, while most specific on U.S. bases and military installations here in the Gulf and across the Middle East, also extends to Americans, whether that be in the form of terror attacks or lone wolf attacks or some sort of bombing attacks. Those are the real concerns and questions among American intelligence and also from sources saying what they are most worried about. But the airspace here, just to give you a sense of how dynamic the situation is, Phil, briefly when those missiles were coming in, we had people coming in from London. All of a sudden, you see airspace closed, people unable to get into the United Arab Emirates, temporary pauses and closures and reroutes. Airlines like Air France have changed their service and started to cut back service altogether to the UAE, just to give you a sense, and to Saudi Arabia, to give you a sense of the region on edge and the stakes and how high they are. Behind me, Phil, the western tip of the Strait of Hormuz, that crucial shipping lane, a series of disputed islands with massive Iranian military presence behind us, and all of this pointing to, of course, the biggest tool, the biggest threat that Iran has at its disposal, which would be perhaps mining or closing this crucial waterway for a fifth of the world's oil every day. But very much a region on edge, and the question of whether that strike in Doha was the first, whether it was what might be next, with U.S. military assets here on high alert. Phil?
Aaron, if you'll let me, kind of want to flash back to our past lives as finance economics reporters, based on what you were just talking about. And that is, watching oil markets throughout the course of the day has been fascinating to me, because before, I think the rest of the world started to exhale a little bit based on the initial, or at least only retaliatory strike we've seen up to this point, markets were responding with a broad sense of, all right, that's it. We're in a good spot now. We can move forward on some degree in terms of where oil prices were. Is there a sense right now in the region that the Strait of Hormuz is not really on the table for Iranian retaliation?
I think it depends on who you talk to. And obviously, Phil, you and I both know they have never in the history, even amidst conflict, closed it before. So there's that, and the market takes solace in that. However, you talk to some in the Iranian government, when we are able to have conversations with them, and they will always put that out there as something that they could do, which, of course, as you could see, the oil markets at this point don't think that that's a real risk. It is interesting, though, you look at the market always as a gauge of what the future holds. We are living in a world where actions do not always match what would be the rational explanation that makes the most sense, right? Whether you see that on tariffs or what you see it on. So, yes, the markets see this as not a real risk. They see escalation of conflict itself as not a real risk. But it's also fair to say that 1 week ago or 10 days ago, the markets would never have thought that we'd be sitting here having these conversations that we're having right now.
That is such an important point. Aaron Burnett in the United Arab Emirates, thank you as always. And of course, Aaron will have much more from the region tonight on Aaron Burnett Out Front right after the lead, 7 o'clock Eastern here on CNN. I want to turn now to Israel and CNN's Jeremy Diamond, who is in Tel Aviv for us. Jeremy, what are you hearing from Israeli officials now that we've seen this response from Iran?
Well, Phil, as those ballistic missiles were headed towards that U.S. base in Qatar, Israeli officials here were certainly on high alert for the potential that Iran's retaliation might also extend to Israeli territory as well. They were prepared for a large barrage of ballistic missiles to be included in that retaliation, but ultimately it seems that for the moment at least, it's been limited to that one base in Doha, Qatar. And now Israeli officials are turning to what the coming days may hold. And in the same way that we are seeing across the region that the temperature is really starting to come down in the wake of what was clearly a carefully telegraphed and relatively limited attack by Iran, Israeli officials are also telling me that they believe that they can achieve their military objectives in Iran within the coming days, and that may then tee up the possibility for a ceasefire in this 10-day conflict. Of course, that will require some diplomacy here, and we don't yet know whether that will flow through the Europeans, perhaps through this channel that Steve Witkoff, this U.S. Special Envoy, has with Iran. But certainly, from the Israeli point of view, it certainly seems like they are headed in the direction of wrapping up their military operations in Iran in the coming days and showing a willingness to engage in diplomacy that would bring this conflict to an end, at least for now. Phil?
Jeremy Diamond for us in Tel Aviv. Thanks so much. Let's discuss now with retired U.S. Air Force General Philip Breedlove and national security expert Joseph Cirincione. General, to start with you, a source telling CNN Iran gave Qatar a heads up about this attack on the U.S. base there. The source saying it was intended to minimize casualties, provide a potential off-ramp. At the same time, a senior Iranian official tells Reuters that Iran will continue its retaliation in response to U.S. attacks. Level set for people here. Where do we stand as this plays out?
Well, thanks for having me on. And nobody really knows, but I think that what we have seen is Iran now is playing more to its internal audience than its external audience. The proportional sort of measure of what happened today, the fact that they warned ahead of time, I think they're looking to try to bring the temperature down, but they have sort of celebrated this with much more victory than actually happened to their internal audience. And I think that's their first concern right now.